Kevin almost got surprised.
I'm not ready yet.
My name is Dwight Collins, and I am an alcoholic. My sobriety birthday is October the 30th of 2005, and I'll forever be grateful and indebted to God and the program of Alcoholics Anonymous for that. I have a home group. It's a Vision for You, and we meet in the original Nashville in near Rocky Mount. And we meet on Tuesday nights. We're a big book study group. We study the first 164 pages, and then we'll study a story, then we'll study a tradition, and when we do have a fifth Tuesday, we'll get back into the first 164, and then we have a speaker meeting the last Tuesday of every month, and I think I got that right. If I did, it's the first time. But we're a three legacy group, and it's where I call home. And I'm nervous. I don't never get nervous until they open up the meeting and people start reading, and then I don't never try to look back to see how many people's here. It's a lot more people sitting down than it was when I sat down. So the nerves are there. Steve did say a prayer for me a while ago, so hopefully here in a few minutes, man, God's going to take over and is going to get us through the next hour and a half. I want to thank Steve for asking me. Well, I say asked me. He actually texted me, so y'all need to get on him about that. Like, he didn't even call. Yeah, that's what I said was, wow. And followed up with you still on for Thursday? Text. But I do appreciate the opportunity to come down and, just somebody getting up and introducing me and saying that I'm a friend. That's a lot. Somebody asking me to come and give my talk. That's a lot. Nobody wanted to hear anything I had to say when I got here, man. Nothing. They was done. They done heard everything, all the lies, the manipulation. So, that's amazing. It's a miracle. We're sitting in here tonight, man, and I think we downplay that a lot in AA is we're miracles. Nobody sitting here deserves to be here tonight. I'm not taking your inventory or nothing like that, but if you drank and acted anything like me, this is not the life I deserve today. And it's an absolute blessing, and it's by the grace of God that I'm here tonight. I do have a sponsor, and I've been privileged enough to sponsor some guys along the way. And I come to meetings, man, and I love a speaker meeting. And a lot of the times people get behind a podium and they always say it's an honor and it's a privilege to do anything for Alcoholics Anonymous. And it's kind of a cliche, but it really is, man. It really is. And I'm glad I'm here tonight. I love speaker meetings. It's my favorite thing about AA. But I wish I was still sitting beside Kevin and Daniel was up here giving his talk. I don't like being the forefront of attention when it comes to giving my talk. I used to love to be the center of attention. Still don't mind it from time to time. But the book is very clear on what I'm supposed to do tonight. It's I'm supposed to get up here and I'm supposed to tell you in a general way what I used to be like, what happened to me, and what I'm like today. And while I'm doing that, it's very clear that I'm supposed to tell you how I developed that relationship with God that allows me to live the life that I do today. I grew up in a very, very small town. I don't know how far it is from here. It's about 35 minutes north of where Greensboro is, right on the Virginia border. So that little accent that y'all hear right now, that's what that is. That is a North Carolina and a South Virginia drawl, and that's where it comes from. So if you can't understand me, I'm sorry. Ask me after the meeting and I'll explain what it meant. But the name of the town that I grew up in is called Mayo Dan. It's where the Mayo and the Dan River meet. So they was real smart, you know what I mean? So there's a lot. But it's a small country town, man, and it's where everybody knows everybody, man. It's, my town was kind of like the show Cheers. Everybody knew everybody knew what you was doing, and it's like everybody especially knew what I was doing and knew who my daddy was. And I've been man, I couldn't tell you how many speaker meetings I've been able to come to. And I've heard everything that you can hear but from behind a podium, split families. One would be a Bible thumper and the other one's a drunk, single parents. Mine ain't like that. I had an absolutely phenomenal childhood. My mom and dad was married for 33 years before my dad passed away, and they tried to afford me every opportunity in life to be a success. So that right there is proof enough that nothing happened in my life to make me an alcoholic. The only thing is I react abnormally to alcohol than what other people do that's not an alcoholic. And they try to do everything right. They try to teach me the morals that I live by today. Growing up, the spiritual principles that's in these steps was in our household. I grew up in church, so I had a knowledge of God. I had a belief of God. I'm not going to say I had a relationship with God. I had my understanding of Him, and that's what I had when I got here. And so we're going to get to the gist of it, man. This is an AA meeting, so we're going to talk about a little bit of drinking. At least let me qualify for being up here. So, I had a brother that was 4 years older than me. And we started out, in a little small Christian school. And I don't know about y'all, but I've always felt that I didn't fit in. I can remember being in kindergarten and like I just didn't measure up. We didn't have a lot of money. I remember the first time I got a brand name pair of shoes. I was in the 3rd grade and I got a pair of Reeboks. Today that's turned into a shoe fetish. I have all kinds of sneakers. I'm a sneaker pro. But I remember that, and I was just always not enough. If I had Steve's hand, I'd fold mine. You know what I'm saying? If my beard could be as nice as Daniel's is, man, I could look around, and if I just had it like you did, my life would be great. And then I've come to find out that there's people that used to look at me and say, if I had it like Dwight had it, my life would be great. And that's just a smidge of how self-centered and self-absorbed I am as a human being. And so we went to this little, private school to the 3rd grade, and then my parents decided to take us out of it and put us in public schools. Now, I already thought I was different. Now you're going to take me from where I got to have a collar shirt on, I got to have church boy haircut, that used to be a problem, that's no longer a problem. You had to make sure it wasn't over your ears and long and all that. And you put me into this school where guys are wearing T-shirts and shorts, and they got long hair, and they're wearing heavy metal shirts, and just all kinds of stuff that I wasn't used to. And I really didn't fit in then. And so I got to look around the room, and I said, okay, there's the cool kids with the Red Bulls, so I'm going to hang out with them. And so I would do what they did. And if some of y'all might not have done that, but I did. And if you do what other people do to try to impress them, it gets you in a lot of trouble. And what I did is I spent the majority of my life reacting to situations that I thought you wanted me to act like that. That's the way you want me to handle that situation. And I would do that just to fit in, man. I'd do whatever it takes to be accepted by you. So it didn't take long, and I got to sit at the table, and I got to be one of the cool kids. And so, going on into middle school, man, and that's when things started for me. We was talking about it on the way down here, that magic age, for a lot of us is 12 to 13 or 12 to 14. That's when we start to experience and stuff like that. So, like I said, I'm from a small country town, man, and like you go downtown anywhere now, there's a daycare everywhere. They all over the place, big business. Back then, we didn't have daycares. We had grannies. And we'd go to grannies, and cousins would go to grannies, and other people would go down to my grannies. And when you got sick at granny, she didn't run down to CVS and get no children's Tylenol. She went over there in her bedroom. She opened up one of her drawers. She pulled out a pint of bourbon. She heated up some tea, some sugar, and some lemon. And she handed it to you, and that was Granny's tonic. Now, I still don't know to this day whether or not Granny's tonic will cure the common cold, but it'll make a 6-year-old boy forget he's got one. And Granny, she had a bunch of kids running around, so she was heavy on the hand, and she didn't want. I think she just tried to pass us out. That's what I do. But that sticks out to me because I can remember exactly what that made me feel like. Now, did I get drunk? No. But I did feel the effects produced by alcohol, and I loved it. Did I turn into a daily drinker at 6? No, that happened a few years later. But what I did do, and when they started letting me come back to Thanksgiving dinners and stuff like that, my cousin, we was talking about Granny's tonic. And I can remember being 6 years old, going up to my granny, acting like I had a cough so she'd fix me a tonic. That's not normal, y'all. You know what I mean? It's just not. So, speed it on up, man. And about 12 years old, I had a brother that was 4 years older than me, and he had a best friend. And at 12 years old, if you asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, I'd have said Nathan. Nathan's dad was a plant manager. Nathan had a truck that was new and fixed up for the time. Nathan had name brand clothes, had the prettiest girlfriends. I mean, he was a success in my eyes, and that's what I wanted to be when I grew up. So I was about 12 years old, and the phone rang. I think most of y'all in here remember the ones on the wall and the long cords. And the phone rang, and I picked it up, and he said, "Hey, man, is Steve here?" I was like, "Nah, man, he's going out on a date." And he's like, "Well, what you doing?" I'm sitting here thinking to myself, man, I'm 12. I ain't got a lot going on. And he says, "Man, you want to go to this party with me?" And, we lived in different times back in. And a lot of us rode four-wheelers and dirt bikes together. And Nathan come and picked me up, and he gave me a talk on the way over there that basically sums up like this: don't make me look stupid. And told me what was going to be there. It's going to be a keg of beer, some liquor, some outside issues, and some females. Let's keep it under control. So I get over there and I see this keg of beer, and they got styrofoam cups like y'all do with your coffee tonight. So I don't care what you do. You can tilt, pour, slow, circles, whatever. When you get done pouring that beer in that styrofoam cup, it still got a head on it about that tall. And I don't know if it was 3, I don't know if it was 6, but I fought through several of those. And that night, the magic for me happened of what alcohol was. I was always insecure, and I always didn't think I fit in, and I was a little chubby kid, and one girl told me I was cute that night, and I turned into Don Juan, man. It was over. I told some jokes, and some people laughed. I felt okay with who I was. For the first time in 12 years, I was cool with being Dwight Collins. Turned around, went home, didn't have no consequences, did not get sick, did not make Nathan regret taking me, didn't embarrass nobody, and woke up the next morning and started. Bill talks about it in his story. He says, "I began to forge a weapon that would all but come back and tear me to ribbons." I didn't know that I was firing up at night, but that night forward, I associated alcohol and fun as one, and I couldn't have one without the other. So every opportunity I got, I drank. Got on up into high school, man, and I'd ride through the parking lot to see what victim we could get to skip school with us and entice them. And we had a friend of ours that was 22, and he was a self-proclaimed alcoholic at 22. And he was a real alcoholic, man, and he didn't have no job. So we'd go pick him up, and at 9 o'clock when old man Mr. Moore stuck that key and opened that ABC store, we started our day off at the 5th of Jose Cuervo. And back in 1988, my dad started a business. It started to get a little successful. And this was our text messages back then. I'd rip out a sheet of notebook paper and put it on the refrigerator and say, "Hey, Dad, we're going to Shoney's in the morning before school. Can you leave me $20? 1994, you can get hammered off $20, man. You know what I mean? Especially if you got a friend that's going to go in on it. And we start our day off with a fifth of liquor, man. And, a lot of the times, 2 o'clock, I'd pass out, wake up at 5 and start again. So I had no tip or anything with the morning drink. I loved it. I started with the morning drink. And I drank alcoholically from the get-go. I drank essentially for the effect produced by alcohol. It's the only reason I wanted to drink. I liked what it did for me. Immediately started having consequences from my drinking. That loving family that tried to raise me in church, I like to blame people. I don't like to look in the mirror and say it's my fault. So my dad's a good scapegoat because he works all the time and he's trying to provide me with the things that I think are important, the material things, and I don't see it at the time. And so it's your fault. You ain't never around. And because he's working 16 hours a day to provide for a family and provide what we need and a lot of the stuff that we wanted. So at like 15 years old, we're already in counseling. I think I went to my first detox when I was 15, and I absolutely believe 100% in what these traditions stand for and the singleness and purpose of Alcoholics Anonymous. Drugs are a big part of my story. I feel like it's not a complete story if I leave that out from behind the podium. So some other issues was involved in that. I'm going to sum it up real quick. When I drink, I like to drink. They make some chemicals out there that allows you to stay awake, to let me keep drinking like I want to drink. So all that stuff started to take in, just a toll on me. School wasn't important no more. Friendships wasn't important no more. I just wanted to do what I wanted to do. And you leave me alone and we're going to be okay. And a lot of the times when we get to Alcoholics Anonymous, man, we think about consequences. A lot of the times those consequences are behind like blue lights or courts or stuff like that. A lot of the consequences that I never seen was the sleepless nights that my mom had. I was 16 or 17 years old. My parents hadn't seen me in a week. And when I did come back in, my mom smacked me. Hadn't seen me in a week, smacked me. I was like, well, okay, I love you too. The reason she had smacked me is they was watching the news one night, and two 17-year-old boys, same age as me and my friend, driving the same year model car, the same color, same description, was in a fatal crash, and they seen it on there. My parents went to each hospital looking for me. And I just thought, if you just leave me alone and let me do what I want to do, I'm okay. I didn't see those consequences. I didn't see the sleepless nights that my mom had. I didn't see the fights that my mom and dad got into for bailing me out of jail. I'm an alcoholic through and through, man. 16 years old. I'm a daily drinker. That's all I'm doing. I want to drink, I want to drink, I want to drink. I get a DWI one night. And it's pretty impressive because I got 2 in one night. So a normal person drinks a little too much, gets pulled over, gets DWI. Is like, hey, I don't need a drink anymore. Let's not do that again. So I got DWI pending in this county, DWI pending in this county for the same night. Then, like 20 days later, I get pulled over. And it's right after they passed the law, if you're under 21 and you blow anything, you get a DWI. So I get DWI number 3 in like 21 days apart. And it just an abnormal person looks at that and goes, hey, I got a drinking problem. Not me. Cops are just picking on me. If you're driving through town at 3 o'clock in the morning in a stolen car, hitting everything you can, they're going to pick on you. But it's the cops' fault. They're just picking on me. Then the second, when they pulled me again, I was like, it's ice on the road. You can't do a field sobriety test with ice on the road. And it was always somebody else. So at 16 years old, man, it's... I just had turned 17. It's 1996, senior year of high school. And all my friends, they're doing what they're supposed to. They're picking what college to go to. I had some friends we was talking about on the way up here. I had some friends that went to Appalachian State. Had some friends that went to ECU. Had some friends, unfortunately, that made it to Carolina. And I wound up at State, but it was the penitentiary. And... At 17 years old, when life is supposed to just be starting, I thought mine was ending. And I was 17 years old, and I go in, and I go through this DART program, and I know what you want to hear when I sit down. You want to hear that I'm going to do the right thing, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. I already know that. I've been in and out of the mental health and going to treatment and all that, and got sentenced to AA when I was 17. I walked in here, and there's a bunch of old dudes that kind of look like Steve. And I looked in here and I was 17 years old, and I thought to myself, I said, man, when I get as old as these cats are and I can't drink and have fun no more, I'm going to be in here pissed off too. And they wasn't. They was in there talking about the solution to alcoholism, but I wasn't ready to hear it. I went to 3 meetings and I said, no, this ain't enough for me. Then I end up in prison, man. I go through the dark program, and they told me, if you do this right here, they'll change the color of your pants. So if anybody's familiar with incarceration, if you're a felon, they give you brown pants. Your goal is to get green pants. Green pants means you got more privilege. And back then it means you could smoke and use the phone whenever you wanted to and all that stuff. So I did what they said do, and they moved me not far from here, down to Morrison Penitentiary when it was still a youth spread. And I got down here and I got my honor grade there. And they sent me to an adult camp. And the long story short, man, it sounds crazy saying this from the podium, but my first stint in prison was not a bad experience. See how insane that sounds? Sounds insane today saying it, man. That's absolutely stupid. But that's the kind of mentality I had, because I wanted you to believe that I was this type of person. And when I come out of prison, that just made that persona that more true. This is the bad guy that I really am. And I thought it was a badge of honor. Here I am, 19. I done did a couple of years in prison. Didn't learn anything. Got out, and my dad always told me something. You need to find a good girl, settle down. And found a lot of bad ones. So I did find this young lady, and we started dating and moved in together. And I don't know how y'all drink, but I wouldn't let you know I drank like I did when I first met you. That's a sign of an alcoholic, just so y'all know that. If you have to try to control or hide your drinking, you're an alcoholic, it ain't no question. And you couldn't tell me that at the time. So I didn't drink openly with her until I heard her say she loved me. And then I eased my drinking in, and then finally she gave me an ultimatum to either quit drinking or move out. So I quit drinking. And so I quit, I don't know if it's 3 months or 5 months, but I was miserable. And no program, no nothing, just not drinking. That's rough. That's bad. That's hard. And so whatever reason, me and that young lady went our separate ways. The next morning, I came to out of a blackout in Gifford County Jail. I was in a basement. And they had, true story, you can't make this stuff up, dude. I'm in jail. Don't know what I'm in jail for. I don't have a shirt on. And I'm in the basement, and I'm beating on this door, and finally somebody comes down there and is like, what are you doing in here? I'm like, I'm hoping you can tell me that. They had forgotten that they put me down there in a holding cell because the jail was so full. So I sit down there, man, it was bad. So needless to say, I didn't have no charges. They immediately let me go. And it was terrible. And even took me back to my car that was at an establishment. And I got in that car, looked in the back, there's a cooler full of beer. I said, man, this is a great day. And immediately picked back up drinking just where I'd left off. And, altogether I've had 7 DUIs. So that car, I didn't have no license. And I was like, you know what, I need to sell this. So I sold it and bought a four-wheeler. Seemed like a good thing to do. And for about 4 years, if you couldn't get there on the four-wheeler, I didn't need to be there. And that's how I got everywhere. And they give you some funny looks about 12 o'clock at night in the Wendy's drive-through on a four-wheeler. But that's how I got around, man. And I got a DWI on it. And what that looked like was one day we was drinking, man, and the next thing I know, and this is some more of those consequences, and that's why I tell them. So I come to out of another blackout, and some of y'all will probably remember the movie The Man Without a Face, Mel Gibson, where half his face was mangled and the other half was normal. I came to out of blackout in ICU in Baptist Hospital in Winston-Salem, and when I looked up, my mom was there, that young lady was there, my brother was there, my dad was there, and his wife, and my niece and nephew. My mom was crying, and I looked over, and this side of my face was 3rd-degree road rash, and that's where that scar comes from. I like to lost my ear. I got several bad scars on me. So you can take somebody that's been in a mental ward in a padded room, when something like that happens, and they're going to go, man, I don't need a drink. I immediately said, man, I overdid it just a little bit. My parents drove 45 minutes to the hospital thinking I was dead. They covered me up on the scene and airlifted me to the hospital. And I just thought I overdid it just a little bit. Something was read tonight in how it works. It says cunning, baffling, powerful. That's the illness we have. I wake up in ICU and my thought is, I overdid it just a little bit. They was prepping me for brain surgery because I had massive head trauma. Doctor comes in and said, man, that beats anything I've ever seen in my life. I've never seen somebody come in the condition you was in last night to have 0 signs of brain swelling today. I stayed in ICU 4 days. He said that if I hadn't been drunk, I'd have died. I didn't go, thank God he was there to save me. I looked at that and it was bad after that, man. I didn't think I could be stopped. Anyway, drunk. Wound up back in the penitentiary, man. 2003. I meet another young lady, and we start dating and moving together. And I go to my dad, and I said, hey, Dad, I think me and Melanie's going to get married in June. And he said, in June? He said, if you're going to marry her, boy, go ahead and marry her. So I got married that Saturday. And I knew Daddy was going to set me up, and that's what he did. He put us on the backside of the farm. And that was November of 2003. And get a phone call in December of 2003 that my dad had been put in the hospital. And my dad would make deals with me. I like to race. So he said, hey, we're going to go race. You just got to come to work every day, and you can't drink till you get done. And he'd make deals. He was a great man. He tried everything that he thought he could do to keep me sober. And I get a phone call from him. He's in the hospital, and he's like, all right, man. He's like, getting out in the morning. And he's like, I love you. I said, well, I love you too, Dad. And I always say that because I can remember probably 3 times in my entire life that my dad said he loved me before I said, I love you. I get another phone call about 2 o'clock at night. It's from my oldest brother, said Daddy passed away. So what that did is it didn't allow no grieving. It allowed me to drink like I wanted to. And I commenced to drink like it was no tomorrow. 3 months later, my father-in-law got diagnosed with terminal lung cancer and passed away. I wasn't a good husband at the time. I wasn't a good son. I wasn't a good brother, and I wasn't a good employee to that brother. All I wanted to do was drink. If you've been through what I just been through, you'd be like this too. So, me and my wife, as a result of my drinking, I'm not a good husband. We get into a fight one night. The next morning, she gets up to leave, and I throw the keys at her, and she leaves. And then I get woke up, and Mom says, "You need to come in here." And I walk in, see some cops in the living room. Ain't no big deal. Done been down this road before. Now I look and see they state troopers, and state troopers don't serve papers. And they asked me who I was, and I told them. They said, "Who you married to?" And I told them. They said, "She's been in an accident." I said, "How bad is she hurt?" They said, "She didn't make it." So needless to say, man, I picked up drinking like I never drank before in my life. And that relationship and belief I had in God went out the door that day. I weighed 230 pounds the day we buried my first wife. And I was admitted into the judicial system on November the 1st of 2005, and I weighed 156 pounds. I stayed up 14 days at a time and thought I was doing great. And I look in the mirror. Bill says it better than anything I've ever heard in my life. He says, I got to that jumping off point. I looked in the mirror and I hated who I was. I did everything I could to kill myself but pull the trigger of that gun that was in my mouth. The only reason I didn't do that is because I was too big of a coward to do it. I pray at night to a God I tell you I didn't believe in anymore to not allow me to wake up. I hated what I had become. And it just continued. The best idea I could come up with in 2005 was I got my last DWI in 2005 on my birthday. I came to out of a blackout driving a big Buick Roadmaster with the blue lights behind me. My homeboy's beside me. I'm like, Justin. He's like, uh-oh. And so I thought about running from him. And I'm like, you're in a Buick Roadmaster. And so I pulled on over and, I got a DWI, and then I had probation violations, for some other crimes that I had committed. And I went to my lawyer and I said, man, just send me to prison. I don't know if any of y'all have ever done that, but if you tell them to send you to prison, they send you to prison. And I got to prison, man, and I got there and I was like, man, this was not a good idea. And I said another prayer to a God I would tell you I didn't believe in anymore. And I said, God, just show me I'm where you want me to be. So my money clicked on my card, and I get this little key, and I go and I buy my cigarettes, and I buy more hygiene stuff, soap, shampoo, lotion. I ain't put lotion on in 4 years, but I bought some when I was in prison because that's just how you show people you got stuff. You got to buy all this hygiene crap. Then I bought a lock because I'm around a bunch of criminals, and I don't want y'all to steal my stuff. And on that lock come a key. And 4 numbers was on that key, and it was 3636. Means nothing to nobody in this room, but it meant the world to me that day. It was the last 4 digits of my phone number my entire life. So I was like, all right, cool, man. That allowed me to get a little bit willing. Went through the DART program again and started to hear some things. Then they shipped me to this camp called Wayne, and that's where all the snitches was. It wasn't snitches, they was peer counselors to the DART program, and they were doing the AA way of life, man. And when you're doing the right things in prison, people look at you funny. And I remember what they said, man. They said, go to meetings, get a sponsor. So I went to meetings and I looked around the room and I see this cat with street clothes. Eyes was real red, and I was like, man, what do you got to do to get sentenced to community service in prison? And they went around and introduced themselves, and they got to this cat. He said, my name's Dean Coley, and I'm an alcoholic. And he probably said it slower than that. I can't talk that slow. And that night, man, my life changed. I walked in that room, I seen some guys smiling. Now, they ain't going to leave like we are tonight. Like, these guys don't have release dates. You understand what I'm saying? They ain't never getting out of prison. They smiling. I'm going to try the coffee. Something's got to be in it. And, so one guy said, hey, if you need a sponsor, see me after the meeting. And I went up to him, stuck my hands out. He said, hey, I'm Carter Downs. I said, I need a sponsor. And I'm a pretty big guy. So if I got to look up at you, you a real big guy. And he brought this dude over named Thomas. He stuck his hand out, and he's got swastikas and flames and had American Badass tattooed on his belly. And if you ever been incarcerated, you look around at people and you go, I wonder what he's in prison for. You did not have to wonder at all what he was in prison for. You knew he done killed 3 or 4 people. And but he stuck his hand out, and he tried to sponsor me. Some things was coming up that he cut, and I went back to Carter and I said, man, I need another sponsor, man. So he hooked me up with this little bitty dude. And I thought the thing went south. I could probably take this cat. And he was doing what he was supposed to, so they changed his pants to green and he left. So I went back to that same guy and I said, Carter, man, take me on. I need a sponsor. And that's what he did, man. And we went through that book. And when it said right, we wrote. We got to the 3rd step prayer, and he looked at me and he said, hey, we need to get on our knees. And I don't know about you, but that ain't something you want to hear from somebody when you in prison. And, but what he meant by it was we got down on our knees in a place that is not spirit in nature. And we held hands and we said the 3rd step prayer. We got to the 4th step, we wrote. We got to the 5th step, he listened and told me what I needed to do. Started to work these steps that separate, that would separate the men from the boy. And that's exactly what it did. And I was talking about it to Kevin on the way down here, man, like the 3rd step prayer. I didn't know how to pray when I got here. So I'm in a dorm with 34 other guys. He's like, say the 3rd step prayer. So I'd get my book out, sit on my bunk, open it up, say the prayer. He's like, are you getting on your knees? I was like, no. And he's like, get on your knees, say that prayer. So I started doing that. And as a result of that, this little Mexican dude that slept beside me, he says, hey, man, that book and the meetings, he's like, is that for alcohol? I said, yeah. He said, they got it in Spanish. I said, yeah. So me getting out of myself and doing something I absolutely didn't want to do, God working through an action, started the Spanish AA group on that camp. Nothing I wanted to do. I want you to leave me alone and just let me read my prayer. So we did all that stuff, and time come to get out, man, and I come to this little town called Wilson. And never heard of it. Got an uncle named Wilson, but I ain't never been to Wilson. But my cousin went to ECU, so he knew where it was. And he said, I'll take you down there. So, I got out, went to see my mom for a few days. And then he drove me down there. So we coming down 264, and we come around the corner, and it said Wilson, 36A, 36B. I said, Zach had my same reaction. I was like, oh, okay, I got you. So I pull into this halfway house, and that same slow-speaking dude that had those red eyes was sitting in the parking lot. We go sit down. He said, how long are you going to stay in Wilson? 3 months. This is October the 15th, 2007. He said, 3 months. I said, yep, get my feet wet, build my network, then be able to go home and take care of my responsibilities. And he looked at me, he said, why don't we let God decide that for us? Not, why don't you let God decide that for you? Why don't we let God decide that for us? I still live there. I showed up to the Flynn home with $60 in my pocket that my oldest brother gave me. And I had 6 teeth in my mouth. So if any of y'all are newly sober and y'all missing any teeth, about 2.5 years sober, they grow back. They do. Yeah. Best thing about that is I get some new ones Monday. You know what I mean? It's time for an upgrade, Steve. And I hit the ground running, man, and I got involved in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I did exactly what y'all told me to do. I got a home group to where I can be accountable. It was a 3 legacy group. It wasn't a meeting. It was a 3 legacy group. Kind of did some stuff like y'all got on this board up here. My sponsor started meeting with me. He said, you need to get some sponsees. So I started working with other alcoholics. So I'm going to sum this on up and, really show y'all what sobriety has been like for me. I don't really know other way to put this. But I wanted somebody to share my life with. And I talked to my sponsor about that. And he said, well, why don't you pray about it? So that's what I did, man. And I prayed for God to put a young lady in my life that I could build a life with. Remember where she was sitting at. Remember what she had on. Remember what she said to me. It wasn't nothing but, hey. But it was it. I was done that day. Been done ever since. And God put that young lady in my life. And it was boy meets girl on the AA campus. And me and her is built a life at Alcoholics Anonymous. Our kids have been raised in Alcoholics Anonymous. They know what spiritual principles are. I've never once said, have you talked to your sponsor? I've never once said you need to go put that on paper. I've never once tried to be her sponsor. For 11 years, I had my own home group and she had her own home group. And I had my sobriety and she had hers. And that's why it's worked, man. And now, does that mean we have a perfect relationship? Absolutely not. So, friend of many of us in here, man, Tom said this right here. Tom said, this is the way you're supposed to have a relationship. You're supposed to meet somebody that you want to date. Find somebody else to go on another date with, and that one, to see if that's who you want to date. Date, get married, move in together, have a family. We did it the other way around. But what's so cool about that, man, is scared to death. I'm 3.5 years sober. And here's this kid coming on the way. And it's like, oh, man. And we go to find out what we're about to have. And that young man, Carter, taught me how to live life successfully while I was in prison. So we go down and we find out we're having a boy. And I said, I'm going to name him after the 2 men that's meant the most to me in my life. That was Carter and my dad. So my son's name is Carter Gray Collins. And what's even more cool than that is he gets to speak to Carter on the telephone. It's like, what's up, little Carter? Nothing much. What's up, big Carter? And he's been doing that for years. And he knows who he is. And he knows why he's named after him. And he knows that if it wasn't for him taking me through the step, I wouldn't be the dad I am today. And that's powerful. That's what Alcoholics Anonymous in a relationship with God can do for somebody. That young lady that I met had a 4-year-old daughter when I met her. And when I proposed to my wife, I proposed to that little girl too. And I promised I'd always be there for her. And I promised I'd always show up. And I'd never leave her. And she don't share my last name. But that's the only thing she don't share with me. That is me through and through, man. And when she was little, she'd knock down the biggest one of y'all to get to me when I got home. To say, hey, Daddy, I love you. She's 18 today. And it's about to graduate high school. And it's tough. She's an 18-year-old young lady, and Daddy I don't like that. And she's pretty. And I'm glad she ain't, hideous or nothing, but I don't like what comes along with that. Just put it like that. And what's cool about that is she FaceTimed me on the way down here. While I was waiting on Kevin, just to talk. And I sent her a message. Do you want me to wear the brown jacket or the blue jacket? And I knew what she wanted me to wear, and I left. And she finally texted me because she was at work. She was like blue. And when I FaceTimed her, I showed her the coat in the back seat. She was like, that's what I thought. And that wouldn't be possible without Alcoholics Anonymous in a relationship with God. So that mom that used to stay up all the time and just wonder what's going to happen to me. I got to watch her. And it sounds crazy, man. But I had the privilege of being there for my mom when my mom needed me. I drove back and forth 3.5 hours when she was in the hospital and spent money I didn't have. But I just did it on faith. I got to feed my mom when she couldn't feed herself. So my brother called me. He said, hey, man, she battled COPD and emphysema for 17 years. Oxygen was stained with nicotine. She was a trooper, boy. She was tough. And it got her. And I watched her dwindle away. And call came. And it's we got to make a decision. And this is the power of Alcoholics Anonymous in a relationship with God. Is I got to be able to walk through that without thinking about a drink. Because when my dad died, I used that as an excuse to drink like I wanted to. I got to be there for my mom and be responsible. And we was all, me, my oldest brother, Tim, which was my half-brother, but Mom raised him, and Steve. We were sitting there. We done had to make the call and said our goodbyes. And I'm holding Mom's hand, and Steve's right there, and Tim's rubbing her feet. And I was telling a story, and the only thing Mom ever wanted any of us to do was get along. That's all she wanted. She's like, I want my 3 boys to get along. And that never happened. And I'm sitting there holding her hand, and I'm talking, a story. So one time my mom and dad get in the car, and they leave. And I'm like 12. Steve's like 16, might be younger than that. Then we get a phone call. And it's like, hey, how y'all doing? Like, none, where y'all at? They're like, oh, we're in Ohio. So they just get in the car and leave and just go riding around. So I was sitting there telling that story, and we all 3 started laughing. And the gift that God gave me was I was able to hold my mama's hand when she left this earth. That's a gift. That's absolutely wonderful. And that's from Alcoholics Anonymous in a relationship with God. That brother Steve battled this illness himself. And I did everything in my power to get him to come into AA's way of life. You will never hear me say the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. I think it downplays the power of what's in AA. This is not the rooms of AA. This is the way of life of Alcoholics Anonymous. So if you call it rooms, think about that next time when you say it. It ain't the rooms that downplays the power of AA. But I tried to get him to accept this way of life, and he just wouldn't do it, man. And finally, I got the phone call from him, from his wife. This illness took him out. And I lost my dad. I've lost my mom. And ain't now one of those pains like it is to lose your hero that I want it to be like my entire life. And y'all have walked me through all that. and seeing that I ain't got a drink because of it today. And in turn with that is I've made it through that. You might go through that one day and know that Dwight went through that. Dwight, how'd you go through this? Wasn't nothing else I can do. And that's a hard thing to do, man. And I know all that seems sad and it seems heartbreaking. But all that, man, happens because life does not stop once we get sober. A lot of the times people come into Alcoholics Anonymous and they got this misconception that it's going to be pink clouds and rainbows. And it is at times, man. I ride them all the time. They fun. You know what I mean? And not the kind that was induced by other stuff. But, you know, life happens. It ain't glorious every day. I wake up. It was funny. I pulled up tonight, man. I see the gentleman rode in on their motorcycles. You got the two nice Harleys sitting there, and you got my man on a scooter right there. I had a scooter too. That's cool. I had the scooter too. I got the Harley now too. So, and a man that comes from what I came from to not having a life at all. You know, people come in here and say, you know, AA gave me my life back. Well, you had a lot more than I did because I didn't have one when I got here. And I talk to my sponsor all the time is, why ain't I just more grateful for what I really am? And he decided that I needed to go back through the steps of AA at 17 years sober. And I don't know if any of y'all have done that with some lengthy sobriety, but that will humble you real quick, especially when you get to that fourth step. And you see all this stuff that you myself think that I should be over and better than, it's still there and it's still blaring. And, you know, I got a sponsor that's willing to journey through that stuff. I wake up, I came to Whips and I had absolutely nothing. Today, me and my wife, we own a successful business. Does it mean that we have bukus of money? Absolutely not. But what it does mean is I'm able to give back to some of those guys that's in that halfway house that I was in, that I can employ today. That same house that I moved into when I got out of the penitentiary, I was able to go back and be the chairman of the board. And while I was chairman, we was able to come to the conclusion that we need a women's halfway house. And we was able to start a woman's halfway house. So if y'all got any women that need somewhere to go, we got a house in Wilson that needs some occupants. But I say all that to say this, man. I listened to a guy one night. He said, if I could describe spiritual principles, this is the best way to do it. I'm not the same man today as I was when I came into Alcoholics Anonymous. Am I perfect at this? Absolutely not. Can I get egotistical? Absolutely. Can I get self-centered? Absolutely. But that's why it's important to have a home group and sponsorship. So while I was in prison, man, and I always like to end with this. Excuse me, this is the book I had when I was in there. It's been through locker and packed up and shipped from this camp to that camp and from this house to that house. And I got sober with some really cool guys that most people would be extremely intimidated with. That's when I'm in my comfort zone, is when I'm in that prison. I'm much more uncomfortable here than I am in a room full of killers. Because this my people, man. That's where I got sober at. And I had one gentleman, like when we got out of prison, this right here was kind of like our yearbook. So all you guys that was in AA and, doing the deal in recovery, they write stuff down and like words of encouragement, stuff like that in the book. There was this one guy, man, his name's, we called him Young Will. And I thought I did. At 17 years old, this young man caught double life. 5 years and 11 months. We never figured out what the 11 months was for. But he got incarcerated with double murder. And this is a gentleman I'd leave my kids around any day because of what AA done in his life. and the man that it turned him into. And he gave me a nickname. He called me the White Man. And he said, the White Man, there are a lot of inspiration in these pages. Remember, at the end of the day, your story, how you was of service and growing spiritually is of the most importance. Remember, not everyone is where everyone else is. Some of us are sick. Don't forget, double life is possible. One life of spiritual growth and one life of BS. So I appreciate it.